Welcome, everybody. Thank you very much for being there. I'm really happy to be once again with you. Today I wanted to share a few ideas. I want to say, first of all, I'm really grateful for the great opportunity I've been having of speaking with people with such interesting minds, such interesting hearts. We've been exploring together with the podcast. For those that have been following from the start, we've gone through spiritual teachings, some more esoteric stuff, and some more out there stuff about time, about the nature of ourselves. And I wanted to take this moment to bring up some ideas that I've been finding in a book by Betty Kovacs, who's one of my guests. She has this amazing book called Merchants of Light. And in this book, she's exploring a little bit the idea of what this imbalance in our society, in our culture, in our times, what it means, where it comes from. And through ideas like the ones I'm going to bring up in a few minutes, and also through speaking with the amazing guests that have been coming on the show, people like Emily Moyer, Anthony Peake, who else? Michael Wan. There's these people who really inspire me. Sonia Barrett, Danny Kath recently, even Jim McCarthy from part of the LL Research Group, connected to the Law of One channelings. And everybody really that's been on the show, they are all people who inspire me, and their ideas have birthed within me, some more clarity towards understanding my own ideas and starting to put them into words through conversation. That's been such a blessing, really. So there's one idea that I've been speaking about a little bit throughout some of the episodes, and it's this idea of ourselves being composed by two parts. You could think of them as the subconscious mind and the conscious mind, the feminine and masculine. Okay, so it's this very ancient idea of the yin and the yang that's present in everything. But particularly, I want to focus on how those aspects are present within each one of us. And the things that have been coming for me, the information, the gnosis that's coming up for me, and what I want to share is that there is this aspect of us, which is what we could call the first person perspective, which is our ego mind, okay, our day-to-day mind. We are here, we're present in our bodies, we're looking out through our eyes, and we're seeing the world in first person. Yeah, and that I would call the conscious mind, or at least associated with the conscious mind. But there's this other aspect of ourselves, which is our higher self. Okay, you could see it as a third person perspective. So it's this aspect of ourselves who is looking at the first person's experience from the outside. So like from above, perhaps, is kind of the metaphor that comes for me, looking from outside of space and time. It's an aspect of ourselves that is connected to the subconscious mind. And since it is outside of space and time, this part can look into the experience, and it can know not just what is going to happen, but what needs to happen. And it can nudge the first person experience. It can nudge it by introducing stuff into the timeline, nudge it towards where this life needs to go. You could say a pre-incarnation contract or choice. So we are our higher self first, which chooses to incarnate into a body with a certain mission, a certain purpose, a certain set of choices, okay, of stuff to accomplish or something to share here, something to experience here, which generally has something to do with helping others realize their own pre-incarnative choices. But it's not necessarily that way for everybody. But probably if you're watching this, you're relatively in tune with the fact that you're here for a particular reason or a set of reasons, and you want to wake those reasons up, because maybe you're going through life, you know, there's this whole stress that we're going through right now, and we're going through life trying to survive, trying to keep our meat body alive and thriving and doing everything that we enjoy doing. But sometimes we lose track of this higher purpose, or sometimes maybe we've just forgotten about it. You know, there's this idea in the law of one that once we incarnate here, there is the veil of forgetting. And it's particularly a veil that comes in between the subconscious and the conscious mind. So again, this idea that we have a higher aspect, a wiser aspect of ourselves that already knows everything that we need and is placing synchronicities, coincidences into our life so that we wake up to the reality of who we are and why we're here. So this aspect is I would call it a more feminine aspect, because it's an aspect that is not forcing us to do what we're here to do. It's a more accepting aspect, a more receiving aspect, who is in this reality where it needs a human body, in our case. So it's in this reality choosing to live an experience, a human experience, so that it can receive something. It's the feminine aspect of our nature, you know, the Shakti aspect perhaps, and the Shiva aspect is the one that is in this life, living and learning, okay, experiencing life. That is a more masculine aspect. Okay, so my point here is that these two aspects are in a dance together, you know, where one has forgotten about the other and the other is trying to help the first one remember. I tell this because, as I've said in different episodes, I've had a few experiences during my life that I am very grateful for, because they've helped me become more aware of this reality, of this dual nature of ourselves. And so people like, for example, Anthony Peake, who's been on the show already, he talks about the daemon eidolon duad or duality. I don't remember exactly the name he uses to define this idea of his. And what I'm presenting here is something very similar. Okay, it's based on the same idea that we have two natures. One is the character in the game, one is the player outside of the game. And the nature of this is, again, that the character forgets he's really the player, and the player is trying to wake up the character, help it remember who it is, so that it can be more present in the game. Okay, because the idea here that I'm presenting right now, and my understanding so far, is not that we necessarily need to wake up so that we can escape the game. Okay, perhaps that is, in the long run, that might be the best idea. But as long as we're here, as long as we are incarnated in a body, we should be grateful for this. We should take this opportunity to learn whatever it is we need to learn here. Maybe there is something that we need to let go. Maybe there is something that we need to incorporate, something we need to accept. And we have this very unique opportunity as a human, in many different religions and spiritual philosophies. Human incarnation is a very valuable one. One is generally the most important one. It's generally like in the center of manifestation, in the center of the wheel of samsara, because it's the only place where you can exit samsara. Okay, the gods and the demon realms and whatever else is on those two sides, they don't have this opportunity that we have. Animals, the hungry ghosts, etc. These different entities don't have the opportunity to awaken within the dream of life, of the illusion of Maya. Yeah, and we do have this opportunity, so we should be, as long as we're here, trying to gather as much information as we can here, learn our lessons, let go of whatever we need to let go, so as to grow through this experience. But the one that is really growing is our higher self. And so, just so I'm not repeating myself, because this is a very powerful understanding that I've been having for some time, and I'm still learning how to put it into words, and this type of videos is helping me so much. And this and the conversations during the podcast, it's helping me get my ideas clear and in order, so as to present them in some way to you guys and see what you guys think about it, and what you could reflect back to me, about the ideas that I'm presenting here, as far as your understandings of the same things. So just then, so I'm not, so I don't keep repeating myself, I'm going to go ahead and read a few excerpts from the book Merchants of Life by Betty J. Kovacs. Okay, this is from chapter 6. One of the first major theorists of symbolic mythic language, Giambattista Vico, understood that symbolic language is equal to conceptual language. Symbolic mythic language, says Vico, is our first language. It is not irrational, but possesses a poetic logic that gives birth to the logic of conceptual consciousness. The symbol cannot be reduced to the idea, nor can the idea be reduced to the symbol. The mind's wholeness depends on an integral and dynamic continuum of movement between the symbol and the idea. All right, so here, as I'm understanding this, Betty is talking about two different types of language, symbolic and conceptual, okay? And they are associated with the symbolic mind and the conceptual mind, which in my understanding would be the higher self and the ego self, okay? So this self of ours who chose to incarnate here came from outside of time, from a higher dimension, from outside of the 3D, or maybe 4D if you want to include time as a fourth dimension. This part of us speaks in symbols. It speaks in the language of ritual. It speaks in mythic language, in mythological language, okay? So when we're reading myths from the ancient past, that's why it's very important to look at them in a poetic kind of way, not in a rational, which I don't think anybody watching this video would do this, but sometimes people read religious books literally, and it's not that it's incorrect, but it's not the only way to read them. And when we read them with this other symbolic interpretation, we are able to extract so much more information from these books. So here she says, the human psyche communicates to human consciousness through the language of metaphor, symbol, story and myth, feeling, intuition, and even outer events. This part is important because I've had these experiences and these moments in my life when I've intuited, that, let's say synchronicity, stuff happens outside, which has a certain meaning for me or for whoever is experiencing it and discerning that it's happening, because you need to be aware, you need to have your eyes open to really see that synchronicity is sending you a message. And our higher self is talking to us through outer events even. So stuff happens outside that has a meaning, and there is a little bit of an awakening within us when we see that meaning. And I think it's super important that we begin to understand that life is a dream and everything that is happening is symbolic. Like when we read a book and it's been intentionally written by the author, to have poetic moments or moments that are synchronistic within the story, or this character, whatever he does, he works a certain profession, and then his profession is what helps him solve the mystery or whatever. And it is thanks to stuff that connects poetically within the story that we read a story or we watch a movie or a show, and the thing makes more sense, and it connects deeply with our hearts, because there are these mystical connections within the story. And we sometimes might think, okay, that happens within a story because it was written that way by its author. But we need to understand that what we're doing there in art is we are mirroring what we usually do, what we always do actually in life. We, us, I, being the higher self, the author of this life, the one who chose to incarnate in a character, we are doing this all the time. We are introducing symbols, we are introducing synchronicities, moments of awakening into the story, so that the character awakens to the fact that he is the author of the story. Okay. Then another interesting part that I have underlined here. This soul language is activated when we need its guidance. If enough people are at a similar crossroads, then there can be an intensification of the developmental process for the whole culture. Very important as well, because this language activates when we need its help. And I would actually add, when we ask for its help. Because we are many times closed to receiving this help, and as a feminine aspect of our nature, it will not impose on us the need to awaken. Why? Because we've been here before, we are going to be here again until we awaken to whatever awakening means, okay? And we are actually living, not just we've had past and future lives, we're actually living simultaneous or parallel lives, but that's maybe a topic for another video of these. And If enough people are at a similar crossroads, there can be an intensification of the developmental process for the whole culture. So if we all awaken to this fact that our higher self is trying to help us and we start asking for help, we will all help in turn the entire culture that is going through a death and rebirth process right now, through an alchemical rebirth. That is how we help the greater collective. You know, I sometimes fall into this trap that I know to be a trap, but I'm still human here, and I tend to fall into this trap. And it's the trying to evangelize my views, trying to convert others unintentionally or very subtly. You know, the ego tries to feel valuable through whatever it receives from the outside world. And sometimes that means knowing that people agree with you. And I fall into this trap of trying to help the collective through trying to awaken others, you know, or sharing my views with others to see if they can resonate with them and if it can help unlock something within them. But I know that it generally is not the way, you know, unless somebody is specifically open to receiving this information and to receiving this kind of waking up. It's generally not very useful to go at it this way. But what is useful, as Betty says here, is being open to the guidance of spirit, or this soul language, like she calls it, being open to that. And then, as more and more people are open to that, the entire culture can begin to shift, you know, because a society or a civilization is built of individuals, you know, and as more and more individuals evolve in their consciousness, turn on certain spiritual aspects of their nature, as this happens, we can, the civilization can begin to shift and transform into a reflection of the collective, you know, of the larger number of people that are vibrating in this new frequency. Yes. So I want to say thank you to everybody for watching this video. I want to ask you to please leave a comment if you will, give this a like, subscribe to the channel. I want to remind you also there's extra content that I'm sharing on my Patreon, and I'm very, very grateful for the people that have already joined. And I wish that we could grow a larger community to continue talking about these ideas, exploring how we can unite the small self with the larger self, with the ego mind, with the soul, the conceptual mind with the symbolic mind, the ego self with the higher self. Okay, there's many names for this. In the end, it's uniting the feminine and the masculine, which is something that in outside world we are seeing a movement of this. You know, there's been this more women have become more outspoken, which is amazing. There's been an acceptance of the feminine side. It's happening, but we need to explore it even deeper to see where we can go next. Okay, to create this world of peace that we all want, and to create it in a way that's valid and useful and valuable for all of us. Okay, so thank you so much for being there. I will leave a link to the Patreon in the comments or in the description. And I will see you very soon with another podcast or maybe another one-on-one conversation like this. So thank you. Bye-bye.